Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the Breaking Free Show. And I'm so happy you've chosen to join us today. It's an honor to have you here. And let me tell you what, each and every week that you're here, I feel you and my guests feel you. And it's just the energy is always so great when I know that you're here and you're listening. And, we have these wonderful guests, and we love to bring the best of the information out to you and love to learn and grow together. So thank you for being here. Amnon is fixing everything, so I'm just waiting for him to get back to his seat so I can say hello to our producer.
Hello, Marilyn. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
Just fine.
And did you have a nice weekend?
It was a good weekend,
Yeah?
and today is even nicer.
It's beautiful. Oh
Mhm.
my God, I love it. It's
The
wonderful.
trees love it.
The trees love it.
The grass loves it.
Everything loves it. Allergies love it. Oh no,
Yeah.
maybe allergies don't love it too much because I
No,
think
they
there's-
do. It
Oh,
does.
they do?
Allergy because it
All right.
puts down everything.
Okay, I don't know everything.
I think.
Yeah, heck. So listen, please feel free. This is an open invitation to call in anytime you want, to chat with us in our chat. You can put your name, whatever you like in there. You can ask questions, you can comment, you can call in at 919-518-9773, or you can come in on Skype, and that would be voice, not video. Remember that. So it's okay. You don't have to go put anything special on. Just come in and join us anytime you want to computers, then the number 2K voice. We'd love to have you comment, ask questions, whatever moves you. This show is for you. So I have two very, very special guests with me today. They are friends. I love them. I've interviewed them before for my book, and you are going to love them too. So let me introduce to you Nancy and Dan Loeffler. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank
Lady
you for
with the
having us.
purple, no, I think it's really purple and blue hair,
Purple
right?
and blue. Right.
Got to have some fun, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So thanks for being here.
Thank you for
So
having us.
it's my pleasure because the subject that we're talking about can be hard, can be chilling, but at the same time is breaking free. And I can't think of two people to talk about it better than you can.
Mhm.
And so just fill our audience in with your story.
Yeah. Our story began almost 19 years ago. It'll be 19 years this coming up November. Our 17-year-old daughter, Leah, was in a car accident on her way to school. And she was in the hospital for 5 days and had no brain activity. And so we had to make the toughest decision of our lives to remove life support. And the night that I left the hospital, I had no idea how I was going to be able to, how my life would continue. It was the most devastating day of my entire life. And I just remember leaving the hospital, and there was a caravan of us and some of Leah's friends and some of our friends, and we drove away from the hospital, drove back home, and began the next phase of our lives. And I had no idea then how I was going to get to the next moment or the next day, let alone here we are almost 19 years later. So that was my initial memory of it.
Dan?
The initial thing was the phone call that we got that said our daughter had been in an accident, and the fear that came up, the wondering what we were going to find when we got to the hospital was one of the hardest things I think as a parent you have to face. And not knowing any of the circumstances, we had to drive into the hospital to greet the principal, one of her teachers, and the police who had escorted us there. That was a pretty chilling moment.
Every time I hear your story, bits and pieces of it or whatever, I'm so emotionally moved as a parent myself and just as a human being. But in the moment that you started talking, I think what got me in that moment was your story for sure, but the way you were looking at her, Dan, I can't help but be moved by how you were staring at her as if not only was she saying it for the first time, you were experiencing it for the first time again, or just the love you have for her.
Uh, it's the love I have for her, definitely. We just celebrated 43 years being married, and but the importance of getting the story out and of sharing what our experience was with others is the important thing. So I look to her. I try and give our uh, clients, our folks that we work with, the some of the emotional content that to let them know that we share the experience,
The human experience.
the human experience. Yes.
So just catch people up a little bit before we go more into the story and stuff. So you are what you call grief guides, right?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Yes. Well, for me, it means that I walk with people who I'm honored to have come into my world to walk with them, to help them to navigate the difficult feelings of grief, to help them to learn how to get better at feeling rather than just feeling better. I help them to to know what I give them permission to grieve in their own way. And one of the ways that I did that for myself was to turn to a practice that had been already a part of my life at the time, and that's a mindfulness practice that really helps me, I still use it today, to be able to be with the feelings that arise in this moment and to let my heart hold those. So that's one of the ways that I walk with my clients. It's only one of the ways. What I found is that when we're grieving, we don't like the feelings. We think that we can push them away. And if we do it for a long enough time, or if we eat enough cookies, in my case, I thought if I ate enough chocolate chip cookies, I wouldn't have to feel the pain. And all that does is delay it. So when we recognize that feeling the feelings is the way through, that's when we begin to, I want to say heal, but it's more of a for me, it was more of a transformation. Mm-hmm. And Dan, in his work, talks about some of the myths of grief, and one of them is keeping busy, or that time heals all wounds. And I like the way you explain that it's not just the time.
Right. Because if you break your arm and you do nothing with it, it'll heal, but it may not heal properly. And the idea behind our service to grief is that we want to help and identify the things that are pitfalls to the grief process. No one ever tells you or teaches you how to deal with loss. And that's one of the things that we have come to understand, that loss happens throughout our lives. We may not recognize it as loss. We think of the loss of a job. The example I use is one of my earliest experiences was loss of a Little League game. I was out in left field, and literally, and we were, coming to the end of our season, and that one game that wasn't really going to make the difference of our record, but it was important, and we lost. And little guys who can identify with the feeling that you get when you're working together to try to solve a problem, or you're trying to win a competition, and you don't make that across the finish line, that's a grief. And it's a small one, but these things accumulate over your lifetime. And loss of a job, loss of a friendship.
Everything is relative.
Right.
So when you
Yes.
think about grief, some of you out there are listening, and you might think your grief pales in comparison to losing a child,
Yeah.
but grief is grief,
Right.
and it feels bad when you lose a job, when you have a pet that dies, when you made a decision that didn't turn out to be a good one. So everything is relative. Yes, we're focusing a little bit on the loss of a child, but that's just a springboard here to say there's ways of dealing with grief. So
Right.
so you work with all kinds of people in all kinds of situations. So let's go back a little bit. Just how long did it take? I mean, was there how long did it take you kind of thing in experience your grief till you did this, till you felt the transformation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I never like to quantify it, to put it in terms of the number of years or the number
'Cause
of
everybody's
whatever,
different.
because everybody's
Right.
different. And we all hear, it's been a year or it's been 2 years. Aren't you over that yet? And I'll never be over the death of my daughter. And we've learned resources to be able to move through our lives. What happened for me, though, is that shortly after Leah died, I received a message that I now recognize as a soul message or intuition, or a message from her that said, losing Leah is too high a price to pay to not live the life that I was meant to live. And that was chilling.
Repeat that again. So listen to this, because you weren't prepared for it, I'm
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
So repeat it again.
Losing Leah is too high a price to pay to not live the life that I was meant to live, to not be who I was meant to be. And boy, that meant I had to get out of bed. That meant I had to figure out a way to participate in my life again, to connect with people again. And I didn't want to do that. It was too painful. It would have been much easier if I had stayed in bed for 19 years, much easier. And I wouldn't have the life that I have today. So it was honoring my daughter to be able to figure out a way to scrape myself out of that deep well of grief that I was in. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. And Dan was in his own part of the journey. We couldn't connect with each other until we each did our own individual journey.
So
Work,
did you
yeah.
were you together then, and living together, or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you've always stayed together.
We've always stayed together.
Right.
But the first, I don't know, even maybe 3-4 years, we were definitely on our own path. And we have a son. We have a son who was 20 at the time, and he took his own path as well. And so as I began that was when I first turned back to my mindfulness practice and started working with the teacher that taught me how to be with my feelings. Because when I was able to be with the feelings, the really difficult, painful feelings of losing my daughter, my head wasn't spinning well, what if, and if only you had done this. And I found that when I could hold my feelings in my heart, they began to shift.
So I want to say something to all of you out there too, as we're talking, and please feel free to call in, because I certainly don't have all the questions, and I certainly don't have the answers. 919-518-9773, or you can come in on Skype, and that would be Computers 2K Voice. These are two special people. I said that in the beginning of the show, they are. But they're not any more special than you. They did what they did, and if you're experiencing this grief, maybe you can too. There's no guarantees that you can, but they're not better than you. They are special, and they are wonderful. And I'm sitting here doing my best to hold back my tears, but they are not any better than you. I just want you to know that.
Absolutely.
And you did bring up a great point too, because sometimes people compare loss, and because each person experiences grief in their own way, there is no comparison. You can't measure a loss of a parent to a loss of a child to a loss of even a pet, because that connection that you have with that person is yours and yours alone. And so we discourage trying to make a comparison because it devalues that relationship, and you really need to honor it.
You do have to honor it, and by spending time in the comparison, you don't actually do your healing. Right? You don't do your mourning. You don't do your healing, and you have to. I mean, and I don't even know if the word healing is the right, because I don't know how you ever heal.
You don't. Yeah,
but the mourning,
and as we've been talking about, everybody's path is their own, and everybody's losses are there to teach them the lessons that they need to learn. So even though Dan and I were each mourning our daughter Leah, we each had a very different path.
And I think one of the interesting things for the two of you in coming out is is to have another man's perspective. And I really like that too, is that you get to share both, because I've interviewed people for my book on families that have lost a child, which is not out yet, and they don't talk, and they haven't, the husband and wife, and haven't found that connection back to share the ongoing dialogue. I mean, does that happen? I mean, I'm sure does that happen with you? Like even now, do you have times where you just have to come back and go, boy, I'm feeling shitty today?
Now we can say that. Early on, we had no way of connecting. We somehow intuitively, I don't know if you knew at the time, that we each had to take our own path, and we could talk about what happened, but we really couldn't help each other in our mourning process.
That's true.
And it was a very parallel path for a long time. And quite frankly, it could have gone either way. I mean, there was a time there when we didn't know if we were going to come out of that and still be together. And maybe even acknowledging that was part of the reason that we were able to come through it and still be together.
Definitely.
So you did mindful. What did you do?
Well, that was I did the typical male response. I took it, put it in a box, and I put it on the shelf in my closet because I felt I had to be strong. And that's one of the myths of grief. We talk about that, the old stereotype, John Wayne, I got to pick up the reins and move forward, because still needed to put bread on the table, still needed to do the 9 to 5 routine, but so much had changed in my life. And the compartmentalization just didn't work. And Nancy has a great line. The subject becomes so loud that it's easier to give it the attention that it needs. And once you unpack the box and say, yes, I'm going to deal with it, then all of a sudden things begin to quiet down, and you begin to make sense of the steps that you need to take to move forward. And for me, after failing my little experiment on ignoring it and figuring that I could deal with it when I had time, I gave it the time that it needed. And my first response was to actually see a counselor and talk it through. I found a wonderful man who was able to give me some great guidance and gave me permission. It's like,
Mhm.
as Nancy had said, give yourself permission to talk, find somebody to talk to, and begin the dialogue. Um, Eventually, I found the grief recovery method, which was started by an engineer, and
Wow.
Mhm. Yeah.
and I like
Wow.
that because with my engineering background, the idea of taking small positive steps uh, in a well-defined program that allowed me to um, make sense of, as I mentioned, all the griefs that had accumulated in my life, and I continue to discover those and deal with
Yeah.
them now. But allowed me to complete some of the uncommunicated grief that I wouldn't have or wouldn't be able to share with my daughter, um, and that was a blessing.
Mhm.
So
I've interviewed several people who, uh, they'll celebrate the anniversary
Mhm.
of the death. They celebrate the birthdays and they
Mhm.
want people to communicate with them. They don't want to forget. They
Right.
want people to. And where are you with that?
Yeah, definitely. We have always celebrated her birthday in some way. Sometimes it's different every year because every year we feel different. We usually do something on the anniversary of her death, which is coming up November 8th. This year, like last year, the Arboretum has a nighttime in the garden, moonlight in the garden. So we're going to do that again this year. Sometimes we on her birthday, the first birthday after she died, we had a remembrance gathering and invited her friends and our friends, and we had a ceremony and ritual to remember her, and ate some of her favorite foods. It's always different. It depends, and that's the other thing. Whatever comes up each year is what is right for you, and that goes with holidays too. Well, holidays are coming up. Holidays can be really difficult when you're grieving, and giving yourself permission to do or not do something that is a tradition is important.
So, and you use the word grieving, which we've been using.
Hmm.
So, does the grieving ever go away?
No,
Okay.
no. Grieving is. I like to think of grieving as a like a it's a something that continues to evolve. So I will never stop grieving for my daughter. However, my grief journey calls me into something greater in each moment. So that now I'm sharing my story more.
right.
And at the
How
beginning,
long did that take?
14 years.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just so you know, everybody, Nancy is an author. Didn't they see? Here we go. She's got a book, right?
Hold it in front of you.
Yeah, get it there. We got a book and we got a journal, right?
The companion journal, right?
And they're both all available on Amazon.
On Amazon.
So
Mhm.
this is your story.
That's my story.
Okay.
It contains my story as well as some things that I've learned along the way. And I reached a point where I was starting to work with clients. I became certified in the mindfulness practice that I talked about, and I thought, okay, I've made it. And that's when I started to get the message that it's time to write your book, and that's what Dan was referring to. I continued to resist writing the book until it was easier to just write it.
So 14 years.
14 years. I wrote this at 14 years. It was published about 2 years ago, and just this year I published the companion journal, which there's questions at the end of each chapter. So
Okay.
the
Alchemy
journal-
of Grief. It's on it.
Yes, the
on
Alchemy of
Amazon.
Grief, Your Journey to Wholeness, and it's available on Amazon.
So again, remember, everybody's paths are different. It could all look different. I think what's so important is that you can see people who are working their grief, not giving up their grief, not forcing their grief, not forgetting their grief, but living alongside of it, basically.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a
Right?
great way of
Is
putting
that
it.
is that
Yeah,
what you?
that's a great way of putting it. Dan referred to the loudness of the feelings in his box, that the box was starting to explode because of what was inside of it. And what I've come to see is that our feelings feel overwhelming when we don't pay attention to them. And as soon as we begin to allow them into our hearts and into our lives and begin to feel them, they begin to quiet down. So all of our feelings just want to be met as they are.
They want to be respected and acknowledged,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, for those of you out there who have struggled with a family member or someone that that has passed away, I don't want to gloss over what we said. You are welcome. Everybody I spoke to that has been grieving welcomes you to say something, to ask them, to honor them.
Yes.
You do not have to run away from them. You just right.
Right. We want people to remember Leah.
Yeah.
So often we would hear someone tell us that they were reluctant to bring up Leah's name because they didn't want to make us feel bad. We're already feeling bad. If you remember our daughter by mentioning her name, that's heartwarming to us.
And to the people that we work with, that was one of the questions that we always invite them to bring their person into the conversation, whether it's a parent or a child, a partner. Naming them and honoring them in that fashion is just so important. It's part of the process of feeling, not feeling better, but
Getting better at feeling.
getting better at feeling. And as a man, I think that's very important. I did not recognize my feelings, and the work that I have done, initially, I think I could name 5 feelings that I had: happy, sad, anger, fear, and shame.
Is this before Leah or after?
This is part of the process. I don't think I've ever really delved into what my feelings were, to be able to name them. And it was through part of the process that I was really begin to connect feelings and naming them. That helped me, and now to bring that message to other men, to invite them to the conversation, and have a safe place where you could have a heartfelt conversation that's not about baseball. It's not about the car you drive. It's not about the things that are going on in the world. It's man talking to another man, and
So what is
that's
it?
heartwarming.
So what is it? What's the first kind of thing you do? Let's say you're talking to some men out there. I'm sure we have men that are listening, or we have some women that are listening, going to have some man watch this afterwards, right? Start the conversation. What would I mean? You've said some things, but what else would you say to a man to help unlock this grief? Not unlock the. Is it unlocking the grieving, or is it what is it?
I think it's acknowledging the fact that we all have had loss, and to try to create the conversation where it's safe, because vulnerability is such a big part of a man's ego. We don't want to appear vulnerable to each other, and once we can assure one another that this is a safe place, we can have that, not have the superficial up here just on the surface, really get down into the heart of things where a connection can be made, a serious connection, and not something that is trivialized. Yeah, because grief is never something that
Right.
you can trivialize.
No, no, you can't.
Mm.
And your connection to men must be a quite a subtle opener. How you are being with the men that come into your space.
Well, and part of it is owning your story. One of the presentations that we're working on now is just that, owning your story and being able to share it deeply from your heart, and to give voice to what has brought you today to you know, the conversation. Yeah.
So you're doing a lot of this work together, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Very fortunate, I think. Right?
Well, and as Nancy mentioned, that there came a point where we had to own up, that we could be together or we could not.
How
And
much do you rely on each other?
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah, we do rely on each other
Sure.
a lot. Yeah.
it's a partnership.
Yeah.
It's a
Definitely a
partnership.
partnership.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because I mean, I feel close to my husband, but we have other things to share. We don't have this to share.
Mm.
Right.
I think this makes it kind of different
Hmm.
in being able to rely on each other in general, but especially with what you have between you.
Yeah. And because we chose to stay together,
And that was a choice.
it definitely was a choice. It was, we had to dig deep to each do our own work, our own grief work, to be able to have two whole people to meet together again.
And I wanted to ask you, so when that time came,
Hmm.
when you each had your own work and you were doing your own work and that time came, was it at a similar timing for both of you? Or did one come to it sooner or what?
When we decided we wanted to stay together, it took 2 years before we were at a point where we were able to commit to each other again.
Oh, so you went through a period where you said, yes, let's do it, but it still took you 2 years to get to that place.
Yes.
Well, and I like to think of it as a sine wave.
Mhm.
We're both
Yeah.
at the peak or the valley of our feelings, and it took us a while to get back into that similar
Where they were
rhythm.
in sync.
Right.
Right.
Where the sine
Exactly.
waves were in sync.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And
Mhm.
and from my perspective, I saw in Nancy her willingness to go there, to do the work. She was meticulous about journaling and expressing herself through her writing, and that's never been my strength, to
write.
commit words to paper, right?
Mhm.
And I think that was part of the problem for me. And it's become more a part of it as we do this work, and as we think of the questions that challenge each other and our clients to explore different areas of their feelings. So
And of the cycle, the grief cycle.
right,
Yeah.
so everybody's
Yeah.
at a different place. They're it takes a while to
Yeah.
You know, one of
resolve.
the areas that was I discussed many times with people that I've interviewed in the past who have lost a child was seeking out a psychic, an intuit,
Yeah.
and many of them have done that. Have
Mhm.
you?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not. I have thought about it, and I've never had the need to. I've always been able to connect with Leah on my own.
Mm.
One of the things early on that started happening is I would receive songs, and I knew they were from her because they were songs that I wouldn't necessarily have listened to in the past, and they would give me chills. So I knew it was a message directly from her. As I was writing, and some of this appears in my book, messages would come through from her. Like, for instance, one day it was raining really, really hard, and the message I got was, "Mom, that's how much I miss you." And I would receive those kinds of messages all the way through, especially in the beginning when I needed them more.
Wow. What about you,
Yeah.
Um, yes, I definitely have felt her presence and have. Um, one of my favorite stories is when Leah was a little girl. Um, she couldn't quite say squirrel. It would be quirlo. And shortly after she died, I was in the backyard and was doing some, yard work and walking down toward the back of the property and thinking about her and missing her. And out of the little tree that was above my head fell a little squirrel. And it hit the ground, bounced up, shook its head and looked at me. And I just made this connection that I miss you too, Dad. And off it scampered into the woods, and I was just left there in awe, and just knew in my heart that that was her reaching out.
You just know when those happen,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You
Yeah.
just know. And you don't. These are not made up. You just know, and if you all listen, right, to your day to day, to whatever your world is around you, whatever it might be, whether it's a message from someone who has passed away or something else, when you listen into that dimension, you will know when there's a message for you,
Right,
right?
right.
There's another story that
Yeah.
Nancy writes about in her book, but that happened to us the day that we found out that she wasn't coming back.
Yeah.
We had driven into the hospital parking structure, and we were on the second or third floor. And as we parked the car and made our way to the stairwell, I opened the door, and Nancy and Peter started going down the stairs.
Peter's your son.
Is our son, yes.
Okay.
And I noticed that there was a little sparrow fluttering around the inside the stairwell, desperate to get out. It was banging against the window, and and I held the door open from the stairwell, and I said, "Come on, little bird." And with that, the realization to me was that I was going to be saying goodbye to our daughter. Little bird happily flew out the door, and Nancy had stopped at the stair and was wondering what I was doing. And then when she saw it, it was both, we didn't say it to each other at the time, but it was.
We both recognized that was the moment we both recognized
That she had left.
she hadn't left yet, but that we were going to be asked to say goodbye.
So when he was sharing that story, you breathed. You had this a breath. What was that?
It was remembering the moment and remembering that that was the moment that we knew, and it was so. We just had a new website designed, which isn't up yet, but it has a sparrow on it. And the person who was designing the website hadn't heard that story. And when she came back with the design and saw this, she said, "I don't know why, but I had to put this little bird here." And
She didn't know about the story?
She did not know about
She
the story.
put a sparrow in there without even knowing the
Yes,
story?
Yes. So that's another.
Wow.
Yeah. So sparrows have been an important part of our journey to another sign when we see a sparrow.
And what do sparrows really mean? Do you know?
I don't recall in this moment, but there is some pertinent meaning to us. It means Leah is saying hi.
She's still here, right? In that way.
Or visiting and somehow.
Remind yourselves that emotions are stored, memories are stored, it's all stored. So, when Nancy had that reaction, that's a stored emotion.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to fight them. They're there. You there's no reason to fight it. You might as well just kind of appreciate it, right? What were you going to say?
Exactly. I was going to say that's an associative memory. So associative memories is any memory that takes you right back into the original feeling, and they can happen. Sometimes they can seem to happen out of the blue, and they happen a lot around holidays because we associate certain things that happen at holidays, smells of certain foods cooking or songs in the case of Christmas, or something at Thanksgiving that you maybe the smell of my grandmother's risotto cooking. It takes you right back into that feeling, and it can happen not just around holidays. It happens for me. It happened a few years after she died. I began to have the same kind of. I began to enter into what I call the portal of Leah's accident and death, in August. She died in November, and I thought this is way too early for me to start entering into this feeling. And so I said, "What's going on? What's happening?" And what was happening is the weather was cool on that one particular August day. And the weather was the same as it was the day of her accident.
Wow!
So it took me right back to that place.
Wow!
Recognizing that, I was able to meet those feelings and not stay there for 2 whole months, or 3 whole months, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just being aware that associative memories are there, what they are, and how to meet them so that you don't stay in that place.
A friend of mine passed away. It's going to be 2 years in May. And when I was at her bedside with hospice, and the hospice nurse was saying that when you think about her, say hello. When you think about Debbie, say hello. And so when those, for whatever reason, whether it's Debbie, whether it's my father, whatever memory of somebody comes into my sphere, my space, I say hello. Because it's kind of like a message from them that they are here with me in that moment.
Absolutely.
So I say hello. I don't know if you've ever done that, but that's what the hospice nurse told me to do. Yeah, say hello.
I love that. I have done it, but I've never heard it explained quite.
Yes,
the way
say
you
hello.
Yeah.
And it's we don't know what there is here. We don't know anything. I think I know a lot. But I fool myself all the time when I think I know so much, and I realize I don't know that much.
Yeah.
I think I might, but I really don't know.
Right.
But it's a nicer thought to say, that, let's say, it doesn't make it any better that Leah's not here in the form that we recognize, but the fact that she's playing music and sharing it with you, that she's sending you other messages, and, that you can feel her, you sense her, it makes it better.
It does.
Otherwise, that'd be a terrible thing to fight away. Right?
Another thing that I'd like to share is hearing stories that others tell about their relationship with, whether it's, in our case, obviously, it's the teenage girl stories that what happened at the sleepover, or what the kinds of things that she did in her free time. But when people share stories of your loved one, it brings them back, and you're right. It's another way of connecting, honoring their memory, and giving them
And you may learn something that you didn't know. I mean, we learned so many
So
things
many
about
things.
Since
about
she's
Leah
passed away.
that we didn't know. Well, she was 17. She didn't share a lot with us.
Oh,
But we
Right.
but we heard from her friends
Right.
that she was always there for them, or different things like that. So, yeah.
And what about when people are sharing and don't remember or don't know that you've lost a child, and they start telling you or sharing something about their child that's 17 and it's going to a party or sleepover, and then in that
Yeah.
moment or in a few moments they go, "Oops, I'm sorry." What do you think of that? When they find out that you did lose a child and they want to stop sharing.
Yeah, I encourage them to share because I'm not just because because my daughter died doesn't mean that I wanted to deny you the joy of your loved ones. Weddings were difficult for us early on. Sometimes they still are. And we would never not go to a wedding to celebrate the union of a husband
spirits,
and
yeah,
wife,
right.
two people who wanted to share their lives together. Some of them, the hardest ones, were friends of Leah's. And the really hard part is the father-daughter dance. There have been some where we have left the room, and that's okay. But it's not going to stop us from celebrating
You just leave the room.
life. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so hear this. It is okay to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It is okay to honor yourself through honoring your grief.
Right.
You have to sometimes know what your trigger might be
Yes.
and to take care of yourself along the way. Maybe one day it'll be okay to be in the room. Maybe it won't be ever when there's a father-daughter dance or
Right.
something,
Yeah.
Right.
And it's, it is difficult. I sit here, I have two daughters, and I, love being with my girls and have had experiences. I know that if I shared with you some of my experiences with my children, you're going to feel something, you're going to feel something about something, but nonetheless, I should share anyway.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely, because that's your experience, and that's how we connect, is through our experiences. Yeah.
So again, I want to show your book.
The Alchemy
Alchemy
of Grief,
of-
Your Journey to Wholeness.
And then the journal.
The companion journal.
And in the journal, what can someone find themselves doing?
The journal is an opportunity to answer the questions that are in the book, the questions about the lessons from the chapter. But there's also places to doodle or draw or just reflect in your own way. There's no right way to do this. There's no right way to go through that. I've had people say they don't read it all the way through. They just pick it up and are drawn to a certain chapter, so that there's no right or wrong way to do any of this.
So here's one thing that you might hear that sounds, oh my goodness, how do they do that? But I know that they're involved in doing some work that has to do with play, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So talk some about that.
Play. What does play have to do with grief?
Oh my God.
Whew.
If you had asked me that before, I wouldn't have an answer, but I've experienced some of this with her. So
Exactly. One of the hardest things for me to do was to reclaim the person that I was before Leah died.
So were you somebody who played before?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
I wasn't. Play was maybe when I was really young, but the past few years I've been trying to incorporate more play into my life. And why is this coming about at this part of my grief journey? Leah was a very playful person. She was bubbly. She was a bounder. She was the light of
The room.
in the room. Yeah, so she was always telling me to lighten up, Mom. So learning how to play helps to connect me to the essence of who I am. And it helps me to be able to do this work, because This is heavy work.
Hence the hair.
Hence the hair. Yes,
Mhm.
being able to be fully expressed as who I am. My grief journey gave me the gift of being able to express completely as who I am. And that was a quest I was on before my grief journey. We're all searching for
Right.
identities. My grief journey is how I was able to do that. And I talk a little bit more about that in the book, but even since the book was published, I have been called to continue to say yes to where I'm being called in each moment. So play is a way to reconnect with that part of myself and also to honor my daughter because
Right.
she loved to play.
I got a question for Dan based on what you're saying.
Mhm.
So, how much of your path now is because of her? Like, is she turning you on to things like play, or is it coming, or is it a mutual thing, or is that just her thing and you're just there to help? What?
Um, no, I think I was always the playful one.
Oh, oh, good.
And actually, one of the things that we did after we moved here was to start ballroom dancing.
And that was because of you.
That was one of the things that
Okay. Okay.
came up,
Okay.
and since then I find myself collecting musical instruments and um, just cultivating my what I like to call my inner 3-year-old.
Well, that's good, isn't it?
Mhm.
Good.
Yeah, let them come out to play, and it helps uh, letting go, letting some of the steam out that accumulates over the course of a day. Um, we we are too serious, and we need to be able to lighten our load somewhat in constructive ways, and um, another story. But when Nancy and I first started going out, I didn't know why her father would tease me mercilessly, and it was my mom at the time said, "It's not because he doesn't like you; it's because he likes you that he
And you
teases,
can't say it.
and he can't say it." Again, another
Right.
way that men relate to one another, poking fun at each other, and it's uh, it's a bad way
Right.
that we tend to try to connect.
Right.
Um,
I'll say years ago, I gave a workshop for the Home Builders Association.
Oh.
And part of it was talking about, a big part was about play. And they wanted very much to leave themselves in the analytical space,
Yeah.
right? And at the very end, some gentleman came over and said, "Thank you. I didn't think I could play my guitar and
Mm.
still do my work."
Hmm.
And the thing is, you have to.
Yes, because then you can do your work better. You have a greater capacity to be able to do the important things.
Absolutely. It is a must that we play, and being able to connect with your partner or with another human being through this process of grief, and
Mhm.
being able to be creative
Yeah.
with your time, with your fun, with each other is not,
Mhm.
you're not being disloyal.
No.
Remember that. That's very important, is to remember that you are not being disloyal by living. So
Right.
repeat the
Right.
line that you opened up with about what Leah told you.
Yeah. That losing Leah is too high a price to pay to not live the life that I was meant to live.
And that can be
That's-
anybody's story.
That's going to be anybody's story. That's one of the questions in the book. What or who did you lose that was too high a price for you? And yeah, that has been my, every time I wanted to stay in bed for longer than was useful to me, or anytime I wanted to use diversion to not feel, those words would come back to me. Losing Leah is too high a price to pay to not live the life that I was meant to live. So she's been my guiding light.
It's a big line. So hold on one second. You have my, so just my books on Amazon in just one afternoon, listening to the hearts of men and twins, millennials. Soon will be opioid addiction. Then it'll be Black fathers and families that have lost a child. And I go on from there. And the first three are on Amazon. So we're almost out of time. Not quite, but almost. So what else would you like our audience to know? And it's a mixed audience, right?
Mhm.
Men, women, people that have lost someone or something, people who haven't. What would
Mhm.
be your overall message?
That it's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay to do grief the way you do grief.
Yeah, that you are not alone, and that you don't have to isolate. Find and connect with another person, a group. Find a resource that can help you.
How would they find you too?
Well,
Our website.
we're available at our website, Being with Grief, www.beingwithgrief.com. Nancy and I both offer our group and individual sessions, and we'd be happy to have a conversation.
Can you repeat
Yeah.
that again, the website?
www.beingwithgrief.com. And Nancy's book is available there. We describe some of the offerings that we have, and there are resources. One of my favorites is Comfort Zone Camp. That's for children ages 6 to 19, and offers a free program for children who have lost a parent, a grandparent, or a sibling. It's a wonderful program.
Dan's been a counselor at several of them.
Oh,
Yes.
you have?
Mhm.
You've gone there and been a counselor?
Yes, for a weekend retreat, and it's amazing to see
Talk
How-
about play.
how a child can come in and think that his world has ended, and by the Sunday afternoon, they're out playing again. They're enjoying themselves, and we've relieved a little bit of the heaviness of their loss. So it's really a
Interesting.
great
And
program.
did you tell me you were planning a retreat? Are you still doing
We're
that?
planning a workshop.
A workshop.
We're planning a workshop that there's no cost for it. It's November 2nd at the Greenway Club at Falls River in Raleigh.
In Raleigh.
If you want more information, you can contact us through our website. But it's a Saturday morning from 8:45 to 11:30. We're going to be sharing our story again, as well as resources to help you with where you are on your grief journey.
But they can work with you no matter where you are.
Yes.
I mean, you can be in
Yes.
Timbuktu. If
Yes.
if you are looking for someone to understand where you are, friends are wonderful, but, they may not tell you everything or share things with you that you may need to hear. What were you going to say?
Just agreeing with you that we're available wherever through Skype or Zoom or even just telephone.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for being here with us today. I'm really honored that you're here and that you tuned in and shared this with people that you may know. I don't often say that, but this is one of those. There's so much grief around. There's so many families that have lost a child. So many kids have lost a parent. Whatever it is, I think it's really worth sharing. And if I can be of any service to you at all, please contact me at Marilyn at MarilynShannon.com. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you, Marilyn.
I love you both so much.
Yeah. Love you
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you. And thank you all. We'll see you soon. Bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.